Imagine you're at a dinner party. You understand every single word being said. You know the grammar, you know the vocabulary. But then, everyone laughs at a joke you didn't catch. You see a look exchanged between friends that you can't decode. You are physically there, but you feel like a social ghost. This is the invisible ceiling, the frustrating gap between knowing English and actually getting it. Today, we're going to break through that wall and show you how to finally understand the context, not just the words. This experience is more common than you might think. We spend years memorizing irregular verbs and perfecting our pronunciation, yet we find ourselves paralyzed when the conversation shifts from the literal to the nuanced. You have built a beautiful house of language, brick by brick, but you haven't yet invited the spirit of the language inside. This is the stage of advanced stagnation, where your brain translates the words perfectly, but your heart fails to capture the sentiment. It is a lonely place to be, standing on the threshold of a culture, watching through the glass, unable to fully participate in the rhythm of life happening on the other side. You aren't lacking words, you are lacking the connective tissue that binds them together. The invisible ceiling is the silent barrier that separates a speaker from a communicator. It is constructed from the things they never taught you in the textbooks, the weight of a pause, the sarcasm hidden in a flat tone, and the cultural shorthand that makes a group of strangers feel like a community. While vocabulary provides the map, cultural intuition provides the compass. Without it, you are lost in a forest of sounds that mean everything and nothing all at once. This ceiling isn't made of a lack of intelligence, it is made of a lack of context. It is the difference between knowing what a cold shoulder means in a dictionary and feeling the temperature of the room drop when someone gives it to you. It is about sensing the vibe before a single syllable is uttered. Imagine a world where you no longer have to mentally translate every sentence before you react. Imagine feeling the humor, the tension, and the warmth of a conversation in real time. That is the goal of our exploration today. Over the next 20 minutes, we are embarking on a journey that goes beyond the surface of the English language. We aren't here to study more lists or drill more tenses. Instead, we are going to perform an autopsy on interaction itself. We will explore how stories shape our understanding, how silence speaks louder than words, and how you can finally transition from being a ghost in the room to being the life of the conversation. This is a deep dive into the soul of English, designed to give you the keys to a world you've been standing outside of for far too long. Let's begin by uncovering the hidden structures of meaning that govern every word we speak and every silence we share. Imagine your mind as a vast library where every book is written in your mother tongue. When you first begin to navigate the world of English, your brain instinctively builds a bridge back to these familiar shelves. This is what we call dictionary mode. It is a survival mechanism, a way for the mind to find security in the unfamiliar. You hear a sentence, you translate it into your native language to understand it. You formulate a response in that same native language, and then you translate it back into English. While this feels like a safe harbor, it is actually the first wall of the literal translation trap. You are not truly speaking. You are performing a silent, exhausting act of decoding that keeps you tethered to the past, preventing you from ever stepping into the natural rhythm of a new culture. The true danger of this trap reveals itself in the high-speed arena of social interaction. In the modern world, conversation is not a slow-motion exchange of data. It is more like jazz, fluid, spontaneous, and rapidly evolving. If you approach a conversation with a word-for-word translation mindset, you are essentially trying to catch a bullet with a net made of dictionary pages. By the time you have finished constructing your sentence in the laboratory of your mind, the moment has already moved on. This creates a painful lag, a gap in time where your personality should be. You find yourself nodding a few seconds too late, or worse, delivering a response that is grammatically flawless but feels emotionally hollow, because the spark of the moment was lost in translation. Beyond the loss of time, there is a much deeper casualty: the loss of intent. Every language possesses a secret heartbeat, a collection of idioms, cultural nuances, and hidden echoes that can never be captured by a literal translation. When you think literally, you strip away the speaker's soul. You might hear the phrase "break a leg" and envision a medical emergency instead of a wish for success. You might interpret a sarcastic "brilliant" as genuine praise. Literal thinking is like looking at a masterpiece through a small keyhole. You can see the individual brushstrokes, but you are completely blind to the entire vision. It turns vibrant human expression into a series of static definitions, leaving you technically correct but profoundly misunderstood by those around you. To escape this trap, we must embrace a radical shift in perspective. We have to accept that English is not a replacement for our native tongue, but a different way of experiencing the world altogether. This requires us to let go of the safety net and step into the discomfort of thinking in the target language. It means learning the feeling of a phrase rather than just its definition. When you stop being a translator and start being a communicator, the mental bridge finally dissolves. You begin to realize that fluency isn't about knowing every word in the dictionary. It is about the courage to exist within the language as it is. This is the moment the trap opens, and for the first time, you are no longer just a visitor in English. You are finally at home.
Beyond the literal meanings of the words we exchange lies a hidden architecture of human understanding, a structure first mapped by the anthropologist Edward T. Hall in his groundbreaking work on intercultural communication. Hall proposed a spectrum that defines how we relate to one another, categorizing societies into high-context and low-context cultures. While we often think of language as a simple vehicle for information, Hall revealed that the message is frequently shaped more by the environment, the relationship, and the unspoken history between speakers than by the vocabulary itself. This realization is essential for anyone seeking to truly master the English language as it is lived, not just as it is written. It asks us to look past the surface and consider the invisible threads that bind a conversation together, transforming a simple exchange into a profound moment of human connection. In the American landscape, communication is often celebrated for its directness and transparency, typically falling on the low-context side of the scale. In business and formal settings, the expectation is that information should be explicit, leaving little room for ambiguity. However, a deeper look into American social life reveals a fascinating paradox. In the casual warmth of a backyard gathering or the fast-paced energy of a city street, Americans frequently rely on the art of reading the room. This is the high-context layer of American culture, a subtle dance where a raised eyebrow, a specific tone of voice, or a deliberate silence can convey more than 1,000 words. It is an invitation to look deeper, suggesting that while the words are clear, the true meaning often resides in the shared energy of the moment. This reliance on the unsaid is rooted in the concept of shared history. When friends or colleagues interact, they are not merely exchanging data, they are drawing from a reservoir of collective experiences and cultural shorthand that makes explicit explanation unnecessary.
In these instances, leaving things unsaid is not an act of exclusion, but a testament to the strength of the bond. To read between the lines is to honor the relationship, acknowledging that some truths are so deeply understood they do not require the clumsiness of verbalization. It is here, in the quiet spaces between sentences, where the most meaningful stories are often told, requiring the listener to engage not just with their ears, but with their intuition and their heart. Navigating this duality between the direct and the intuitive is what elevates a speaker from being proficient to being truly fluent in the human experience. It requires a shift in perspective, moving away from a dictionary-defined view of language toward a more holistic, empathetic approach. By understanding the theory of high and low context, we begin to see that communication is an act of co-creation. We are not just delivering messages, we are building bridges across the gaps of our individual perceptions. As you continue your journey through the English story, remember that the most powerful things you will ever say might be the things you choose to leave to the imagination, trusting in the shared humanity that connects us all beyond the reach of words. In our journey through the English language, we often find ourselves clinging to the safety of definitions. We memorize lists of verbs, study the rigid structures of grammar, and believe that if we simply use the right word, we will be understood.
But there is a secret dimension to communication that no textbook can fully capture. A hidden layer where the words spoken are merely a shell for the true meaning beneath. This is the realm of subtext and sarcasm, a place where a simple phrase like, "That's great," can transform from a celebration into a cutting remark of disappointment. To truly master English is to move beyond the literal and learn to listen with your intuition as much as your ears. Imagine a scene where a young professional finally completes a massive project only for their computer to crash and erase every single file. As they stare at the blank screen, they let out a heavy sigh and mutter, "Well, that's just great." In this moment, the dictionary definition of great, meaning something of an extent, amount, or intensity considerably above the normal, is utterly irrelevant. Here, the word is a weapon of irony. The meaning is inverted by the weight of the tone, the slump of the shoulders, and the weary roll of the eyes. This is the magic of subtext. It allows us to express frustration, humor, and even shared pain through the very words that usually represent joy. The power of delivery often overrides the literal definition of the vocabulary used. In English, the melody of your voice is the conductor of the message's intent. A rising pitch at the end of a sentence might signal a genuine compliment, while a flat, monotone delivery often suggests boredom or hidden sarcasm. Body language acts as the punctuation for these unspoken sentiments. A forced smile or a slight tilt of the head can signal that someone is being polite while their heart is elsewhere. When we ignore these cues, we're only hearing half the conversation. The true narrative of a story often lives in the pauses between words and the subtle shifts in a speaker's energy. One of the most fascinating aspects of modern communication is what we might call the American politeness mask. In many English-speaking cultures, there is a social contract that dictates a level of surface-level optimism. When someone asks, "How are you?" in a passing hallway, they're rarely inviting a deep monologue about your personal struggles. It is a ritualistic greeting where the expected answer is, "Good, and you?" Similarly, when a colleague describes your unconventional idea as interesting, they might be using a linguistic shield to avoid saying they disagree. Understanding this mask is not about cynicism, but about developing a cultural intelligence that allows you to navigate professional and social circles with grace and clarity. As you continue to evolve as a storyteller and a speaker, remember that the most profound messages are often the ones left unsaid.
Mastery of English is not just about the breadth of your vocabulary, but the depth of your perception. It is about recognizing the warmth in a teasing joke and the coldness in a polite refusal. By learning to read the hidden layer of sarcasm and subtext, you unlock the ability to connect with others on a human level that transcends the mechanical limits of language. You begin to see that words are not just tools for information, but brushes used to paint the complex, often contradictory landscape of the human experience. Imagine standing in a room where every word spoken is familiar, yet the collective laughter feels like a secret code you cannot crack. You have studied the grammar, you have mastered the vocabulary, but there is an invisible layer of meaning hovering just above the conversation. This is the world of cultural anchors, the shared history, the iconic sports moments, and the pop culture echoes that act as a profound shorthand for native speakers.
These anchors are the threads that weave individual words into a tapestry of shared identity. When someone makes a passing reference to a historical event or a legendary film quote, they aren't just conveying information, they are reaching out to a common understanding that bypasses the need for explanation. It is a language within a language, one that defines the soul of a community. Consider the Seinfeld effect, a phenomenon where the humor of a culture seems almost impossible to grasp for an outsider. It is not because the words are difficult, but because the humor lives in the tiny, unspoken social contracts of a specific time and place. These classic stories and shows become the blueprints for how people navigate social awkwardness, friendship, and failure. If you don't know the anchor, you miss the nuance. But this is the beauty of language. It is a living museum of human experience. The frustration you feel when missing a reference is actually the threshold of a deeper connection. It is the realization that language is not just a tool for logic, but a vessel for collective memory. The good news is that you do not need to become an encyclopedia of global trivia to find your footing. You only need to identify the anchors, those specific, high-impact cultural touchstones that hold the most weight. You don't need to know every player in a league, just the spirit of the game. You don't need to have watched every sitcom, just the archetypes they created. By focusing on these pillars, you begin to see the world through the eyes of the speaker. You start to recognize why a certain tone of voice or a specific metaphor carries so much gravity. You are no longer just translating, you are beginning to feel the rhythm of the culture itself. As you move forward, let every missing reference be an invitation rather than a barrier.
Every time you ask, "What did that mean?" you are uncovering a new layer of the human story. This process of discovery is what transforms a student into a storyteller. It is an inspiring journey of bridge building where every anchor you drop secures your place in a larger community. Remember, the goal of language is connection, and every cultural secret you unlock is a hand reaching back to yours across the divide of experience. You are learning to see the world in high definition, where every word is colored by the rich history of those who spoke it before you. Language is often misunderstood as a simple mechanism for data transfer, a series of codes we exchange to get what we want. But if we look closer, we realize that language is actually the most profound tool for human connection ever devised. It is the invisible thread that weaves two separate souls into a shared moment of understanding. When we speak, we aren't just sending signals, we are inviting someone into our internal world. This realization is the first step toward true fluency. It is not about how many words you know, but how those words make the person across from you feel. It is about the warmth in your tone and the intention in your gaze. Yet many of us face a silent tragedy when we speak a second language like English. We feel as though our vibrant, complex personalities are being squeezed through a narrow tube, emerging on the other side as something dull and unrecognizable. You might be the funniest person in your native tongue, but in English, you feel stiff, hesitant, and perhaps even boring. This loss of self is the greatest hurdle for any learner. We focus so much on the technicalities, the perfect preposition or the correct conjugation, that we forget to bring our spirit into the conversation. We become prisoners of our own vocabulary, trapped in a version of ourselves that lacks the nuance of our true character. To reclaim your voice, you must shift your focus from the mechanics of the tongue to the intelligence of the heart.
Emotional intelligence in language means understanding that a mistake in grammar is far less important than a failure to connect. When you stop worrying about the right word and start focusing on the feeling behind the word, something magical happens. Your body relaxes, your natural cadence returns, and your authentic personality begins to leak through the gaps in your English. You are no longer performing a script, you are expressing a soul. By prioritizing the emotional resonance of your message, you allow your listener to see the real you, beyond the limitations of your current fluency level. Ultimately, language is a performance of empathy. It is the art of being seen and seeing others in return. Reclaiming your voice in English is an act of courage. It is the decision to be vulnerable, to be imperfect, and to be present. You are not a walking dictionary. You are a storyteller, a dreamer, and a friend. The words are merely the vehicles for your energy. As you move forward, remember that your worth as a communicator is not measured by the absence of errors, but by the depth of the bonds you create. When you speak from a place of emotional honesty, you transcend the boundaries of language itself, creating a connection that is timeless and universal. Have you ever wondered why a single memory from a childhood story stays with you longer than 1,000 vocabulary cards? The answer lies deep within the architecture of the human brain. We are not evolved to store spreadsheets or memorized conjugation tables. We are biological storytelling machines. When we engage with a narrative, our neural pathways don't just light up in the language processing centers. They ignite across the sensory and emotional cortex. This is the science of context. A story provides a multidimensional framework where every word is anchored to a feeling, a visual, or a consequence. By weaving information into a narrative thread, we transform abstract symbols into lived reality. In the traditional classroom, language is often treated like a dismantled engine, a collection of cold parts like syntax, morphology, and tense. But the format of an English story changes the game entirely. Instead of asking you to memorize the mechanics of the past perfect tense, a story places you inside the mind of a character reflecting on a lost opportunity. You aren't just learning a rule, you are feeling the weight of the moment. This contextual immersion is why stories are more effective than any grammar drill. The brain recognizes patterns naturally when they are presented in a sequence that matters. When a character we care about speaks, the language they use becomes a tool for survival and connection, making the lesson unforgettable. This leads us to the concept of simulated experience. When you listen to or read a story, your brain cannot distinguish between the words on the page and a real-life event. If a character is running through a cold forest, your motor cortex prepares for movement, and your brain processes the word shiver through the lens of physical sensation. This is far superior to rote memorization because it builds memory anchors through empathy. You are essentially hacking your own biology to learn English through a surrogate life.
This simulation allows you to encounter complex vocabulary in its natural habitat, surrounded by the emotional cues that give it meaning. As we look toward the future of learning, the English story remains the ultimate context machine because it respects the way our minds actually work. It replaces the boredom of repetition with the thrill of discovery. By choosing stories over spreadsheets, you are inviting your brain to participate in an ancient ritual of understanding. The grammar becomes invisible, and the vocabulary becomes your own.
This is not just about learning a language, it is about expanding your world through the eyes of others. In this digital age, the most advanced technology for learning remains the oldest one we have, a well-told story that resonates with the human heart. We have been taught to treat language like a puzzle, a collection of cold, disconnected pieces that must be forced together. But what if we treated English not as a subject to be mastered, but as a melody to be felt? This brings us to the core of our transformation, the deep listening method. This isn't your standard classroom exercise. It is an invitation to experience the world through a different frequency. Deep listening requires us to lower our analytical shields and allow the language to wash over us, focusing first on the atmosphere before we ever reach for a dictionary. It is about understanding that the true meaning of a sentence often lies not in the literal definitions, but in the delicate space between the words. When you sit down to watch a film or a documentary, the instinct is often to pause every 30 seconds to write down an unfamiliar word. I want you to resist that urge and instead watch for the vibe. Pay attention to the rhythm of the conversation, the tension in the room, and the emotional weight behind a character's delivery. If a character says, "I'm fine," with a trembling whip, the word fine loses its dictionary definition and takes on the shape of sorrow. By prioritizing the vibe over the vocabulary, you are training your brain to recognize patterns and emotional cues that are universal to the human experience. You are learning the music of English, which is far more important than memorizing individual notes.
Adopting the deep listening method is a commitment to a slower, more intentional way of living. It challenges the modern obsession with speed and efficiency, asking you to trade the quality of words learned for the quality of connection made. As you move forward, remember that every conversation you hear is a story waiting to be understood on a deeper level. You are no longer a student looking in from the outside. You are an observer, a listener, and eventually a storyteller. The vibe will become your guide, resonance will become your voice, and your context journal will become the map of your journey. This is how you bridge the gap between knowing a language and truly living it. Imagine a traveler who has walked a long, disciplined road. You have learned the maps, memorized the signs, and followed the paths meticulously laid out by others. But suddenly, the road ends at a towering glass ceiling. You can see the sky above, the fluent, effortless conversations of native speakers, and the rich textures of complex stories, but you feel stuck, unable to ascend further. This is the plateau where most learners falter, mistakenly believing they have reached the limit of their potential. However, the truth is far more profound. You haven't reached your limit. You have simply outgrown your current tools. To break through this glass ceiling, you must undergo a fundamental transformation. The next 90 days are not about studying harder, but about changing your identity from a learner into a participant of the world. The first essential shift in your roadmap is the transition from student to observer. A student is a consumer of rules, constantly looking for a textbook to validate their progress. An observer, however, is an architect of patterns. When you listen to a story or engage with a piece of art, you must stop asking, "Why is this grammar correct?"
and start asking, how does this choice of words change the atmosphere? By observing, you begin to notice the rhythm, the unspoken nuances, and the emotional cadence that no grammar book can ever capture. You're no longer trying to solve a puzzle with a fixed set of pieces. You are watching how language breathes and adapts in the wild. This mental shift liberates you from the paralyzing fear of being wrong and opens the door to a state of genuine, effortless curiosity. To fuel this transformation, you must immerse yourself in what we call raw, unstructured English. This is the language of reality, the podcasts where speakers interrupt one another with excitement, the documentaries where experts speak with unfiltered passion, and the literature where rules are intentionally broken to evoke a feeling. Many learners avoid this raw state because it feels like standing in a storm of noise. But it is precisely within this storm that your brain learns to filter signal from chaos. For the next 90 days, make the unstructured your home. Do not reach for the subtitles the moment a sentence becomes difficult. Allow the sounds to wash over you until the strange becomes familiar and the complex becomes intuitive. You are training your ear not just to hear words, but to recognize the soul of the message. Finally, we must navigate the intuition phase. This is the quiet, almost invisible period where you stop translating in your head and start feeling the language. It's a phase marked by subtle victories, a joke that you understand without thinking, or a thought that forms in English before you can stop it. There will be days during these 90 days where you feel you are regressing, but these are actually the moments when your subconscious is working most intensely to bridge the gap between knowledge and instinct. Set your expectations not on the quantity of words memorized, but on the quality of your presence within the language. By the end of this roadmap, you won't just be speaking a different language, you will be experiencing a different version of yourself. The ceiling is not a barrier, it is simply the final gate to your freedom. When you finally reach the summit, the air feels different. It is thinner, perhaps, but infinitely clearer. We spend so much of our lives looking upward, staring at the ceilings we have built for ourselves, or the ones society has constructed around us.
But there comes a moment, a singular point of realization where the ceiling dissolves and becomes the very floor upon which you stand. This is the view from the top. It is not a place of pride, but a place of profound perspective. You begin to see that the struggle was never about the height itself, but about the strength you gathered while climbing. The landscape below is no longer a maze of confusion. It is a beautiful, intricate map of experiences that led you exactly where you were meant to be. This is what it looks like when you finally get it. Not just the language, but the heartbeat of the human experience. Beyond the grammatical structures and the vast vocabulary lies something far more precious: the ability to resonate with another soul across the invisible borders of culture. When we learn to communicate, we aren't just exchanging information, we are weaving a global tapestry of shared empathy. You realize that a story told in a different tongue still carries the same weight of sorrow, the same spark of joy, and the same universal yearning for connection. This cross-cultural bridge is the true masterpiece of the human spirit. It allows us to step into the shoes of a stranger and find, to our amazement, that they fit us perfectly. We are no longer isolated islands, but part of a vast, interconnected archipelago of stories, each one enriching the other. This journey we have taken together is not just a lesson in English, it is a testament to your resilience. Every time you stumbled over a word or felt the weight of a complex sentence, you are actually refining your own voice. The beauty of this process is that it is evergreen. The wisdom you have gained here does not fade with time. It grows more vibrant as you apply it to the world around you.
You have learned to see beyond the surface. to find the nuance in the silence, and to appreciate the rhythmic dance of storytelling. This newfound clarity is your reward for the persistence you showed when the peak was shrouded in mist. Now the horizon is wide, and the possibilities are as limitless as the sky above you. As we conclude this chapter of our collective narrative, I want you to remember that your voice is a vital part of this community. We are a gathering of dreamers and doers, bound by the love of a well-told story and the pursuit of meaningful expression. Do not let this be the end of your exploration. Engage with us, share your own triumphs in the comments below, and let your unique perspective light the way for others who are still navigating their own ascent. If this journey has touched you, subscribe and join our story-driven community, for there are always more heights to reach and more tales to tell. The view from the top is breathtaking, but it is even more beautiful when shared. Thank you for walking this path with us. Until our next story begins, keep looking beyond the ceiling.